Hello everyone, welcome back to now our countdown listen making sections. I did not think that the last one was going to be as long as it is, but that's to be expected with the territory. So obviously now we're moving on to season 2, and it's a little one entry less because number 1, we have two-parters, the finale and the premiere, and basically overall, I'd say season 2 was a step up overall in terms of like the set pieces and the actions. But the episodes in season 2 had a lot of more noticeable duds. And I think we're gonna get through the obvious ones. So let's get into it. Same rules as last time. I am ranking every episode from Friendship is Magic season 2 from what I think is the worst to what I think is best. Just as a reminder, this is all my personal opinion. If there's an episode that you like that I don't, that's fine. If I like an episode that you hate, that's perfectly fine. This list, as well as the list I'm doing for the remaining 8 seasons, this is all just for fun. Let's keep that in mind. With all that said, let's get into it. The top 24 My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 2 episodes. Number 24, The Mysterious Mare Duel. I mean, really, is anybody really surprised that The Mysterious Mare Duel is the worst episode of Season 2? I mean, really, what can I say that hasn't already been said about the episode? But basically, Rainbow Dash, at first getting more involved in her superhero motif in rescuing ponies' lives, and then her ego ends up getting the better of her, and then I should also mention The Mysterious Mare Duel that reminds me of The Shadow from the 1995 Alec Baldwin movie, which was based off of the 1930s radio show, and shoving in a bunch of superhero references with Rainbow Dash's ego being annoying. And of course, the worst part about the episode is the underhandedness of the moral, where basically the rest of the main 6, who P.S. were the Mysterious Mare Duel all at the same time, rubbing it all in Rainbow Dash's face, and they also end up doing it behind her back. And then when they criticize Rainbow Dash for basically being like, don't you want me to be a hero? And when Applejack says, well, a real hero doesn't brag. Oh, kind of like what you did earlier in the episode. And look, I get that the moral is basically showing that it's okay to celebrate your accomplishments, but you have to learn not to be showboating the entire time. The only problem is that the episode's moral is shit, because having it be designed to basically have the main 6 it's showboating to Rainbow Dash behind her back, and then regurgitate that moral to her basically comes off as really fucking patronizing. And this is what I should have played during the episode when I initially reviewed it that perfectly described the entirety of this episode.
This is a final battle with blatant design flaws that, regardless of any message, will make you unsatisfied with the game rather than with the story. When I kept getting killed by Jasper, all I could think was that was really fucking cheap, instead of, this whole revenge thing isn't worth it.
Yeah, and I understand those are not things, but basically it's kind of what I felt while watching the episode. When I kept seeing the rest of the main 6 basically showboating and celebrating the Mysterious Mare Duel's accomplishments behind Rainbow Dash's back, and then basically trying to doing the same thing again while also criticizing Rainbow Dash's showboating, I'm like, well, that's really fucking cheap. Instead, maybe they do have a point. And I'm not saying that you can't have a moral about basically showing and celebrating your accomplishments without your ego taking control. That is a brilliant idea. Yeah, but it should never come at the expense of decent writing. If the moral was more effective, it would have immersed the viewer into the world and understand more of the lesson rather than take it out of it with shitty writing. So, yeah, I really don't need to say what everybody else has said about this episode. And I understand that there are some people like the Fiery Joker to defend this episode, but yeah, this episode is still not good all these years later. It's still a terrible episode, and it's still considered to be one of the worst. So, I haven't said what everybody else has been said, but the episode's bad. Next! Number 23, Dragon Quest. Oh look, another episode that has been talked to death so much that it's not really worth mentioning. Pretty much the same thing already applies that's already been said about this episode. Basically, with the generic bully plots, with basically the introduction of the Garble on all the bully dragons. One can make the argument about the algorithm of basically the bullies being the male dominant and the ponies representing the show, blah blah blah. The only problem is that the writing was insipid and annoying, and how Rainbow Dash and basically everybody's treatment of Spike, and then not to mention Garble and his goon squad threatening to murder Spike, and then we could have gotten a cool action scene with Twilight, pre-Alicorn, Rainbow Dash, and Rarity basically mopping the floor with the three, and then pulling a Monty Python and just running away. And yeah, basically the plot was forced, the character development was forced, the moral was forced, and anything that revolved around the episode either made me cringe or made me angry. That being said, the only reason why this is only number 23 and why I think it's better than The Mysterious Ne'er-Do-Well is that the episode did have a clever idea in wanting to dive into Spike's backstory, and obviously the montage of Spike going through the dragon migration was at least decent. The rest of the episode is still shit. Moving on. Number 22, Putting Your Hoof Down. Like I said, this is another one of those episodes where basically, yeah, it's still awful. Obviously, the worst part about the episode is just of how downright unpleasant it was. How almost everybody in Ponyville, for some ungodly reason, was a straight-up asshole. Angel being the absolute worst. And yes, I know it's not exactly, domestic abuse, and that it basically is more, or Angel is still more of a bratty kid. The problem is, that does not excuse Angel's behavior or anybody else in Ponyville throughout the first half of the episode, of which none of those ponies suffer any kind of consequences. And I should also mention how Fluttershy basically, while it was fine for the first couple of ponies after the training she got from Iron Will, it then got progressively worse and worse. And of course, there was the incredible lashing out that she did to both Rarity and Pinkie Pie, and just how poorly handled the entire moral was, and it really didn't make me like Iron Will as a character at all. Really, my main problem with Putting Your Hoof Down is just of how downright unpleasant it was. When I said that this episode was essentially the Stanley's Cup of Friendship is Magic, I wasn't lying. It was really just an unpleasant episode to watch. With that being said, I do think it's still better than both of The Mysterious Ne'er-Do-Well and Dragon Quest, because at the very least, one can make the argument for how detailed of an episode it is, and I do like the moral of just being able to control your anger and when to be assertive, but the problem is the execution was just cruel, mean-spirited, unfunny, dark, twisted, depraved, and disgusting to watch. So yeah, this episode, I know there's some defenses for it, but I still think it's awful. Alright, number 21, the Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000. This is another one of those episodes that I have a personal vendetta against, and I just hate it for what it is. This is another one of those episodes where for some reason either the side characters or the main characters are straight up assholes, and I am not a fan of that at all. Obviously, Rainbow Dash, for trying to push on the whole cider season. Pinkie is also at fault for this, for how basically insensitive she was. And then I should also mention the introduction of the Flam Flam brothers. Obviously, as minor antagonists, they're not so bad, but their first appearance was just really not that enjoyable. And especially because I already was familiar with the story of John Henry, I kind of knew where the story was going to lead, of equality over quantity. And then, of course, there's the incredible idea of basically having the Apple family pick a fight with the Flim Flam brothers, Applejack not doing anything to step in and saying that they basically, she could have saved their business and not avoided any of this bullshit in the first place. And then, of course, we know the predictable outcome with Flim and Flam's showboating and basically doing quantity over quality. And then, of course, there's the ingenious half-assed moral by Rainbow Dash at the end that is just really, really, really aggravating to watch. Now, in spite of that, it's only number 21, and it's better than the other three episodes, because at the very least, there were a couple of funny jokes in there, But the one joke, the running joke of Rainbow Dash not getting her cider, that wasn't funny. The only funny thing I can really think of from this episode was when they run out of cider the second time and Rainbow Dash just shouts, "Oh, for Pete's sake!" That kind of describes my frustration of this episode. So yeah, the Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000. I know there are people who are like this episode, but I still think it's awful. Number 20, the Cutie Pox. Up until this point, the first 4 episodes on this list, I think everybody can agree, well, the first 2 or 3, everybody can agree are awful episodes, and that's basically what it is. The Cutie Pox is an episode that I think really is just another one of those Cutie Mark Crusaders trying to get Cutie Mark scenes, and then Applejack trying to find a shortcut and then suffering the consequences for it. While it is a good moral that you shouldn't rush things and that it should have to take time, it's the same problem that I had with Showstoppers, where we pretty much know where this is going to lead, since we've already had multiple episodes of the Cutie Mark Crusaders trying to get their cutie marks in literally anything, and then outright failing spectacularly, that you kind of know where it's going to lead, and we're just playing the waiting game. And I just think that the fact, and I understand that, you know, she is still just a kid, and because we are only in season 2, and they haven't had a lot of time, more time to mature, like I said, the audience is basically just playing the waiting game, and I just think the fact that basically they treat the cutie pox like it's some kind of contagious disease is just kind of blowing it out of proportions, and obviously it's not bad, but there's just nothing about the episode that's engaging, since you kind of already know what the plot is going to be. So yeah, the Cutie Pox is an average episode at best. Number 19, Baby Cakes. Now I know what you're thinking. Didn't I give Baby Cakes like, what, a B minus when I first reviewed the episode back in like, what, late 2013, early 2014, something like that? Well, I think really this is another one of those episodes where I think I just started to like the episode less and less. I think obviously with seeing the Fiery Jokers review, it did kind of put things in perspective on the episode, and it was just a lot of cringe that I just couldn't find myself but not enjoy. I think this is one of those episodes that basically kind of says if you show this episode to a friend who has never seen Friendship is Magic, but is familiar with My Little Pony, they would just think exactly what it's like. I just think, that being said, it's only number 18. It's only number 19 because there were a couple of funny gags I did like from Pinky, but I just think for her just to refuse any help and deny any help from Twilight, and who was obviously struggling to handle them and doesn't understand it whatsoever, it was just really kind of a trying thing to watch, and at times I just felt a little uncomfortable. That being said, I did like the horror elements in the entire thing, but it's just with all the continuity flaws of how 2 babies are able to fly and use magic easily just boggles my mind. So yeah, while it's not bad as the other episode, Baby Cakes is kind of what you expect when you think My Little Pony, and this is the kind of episode that people say would come out of Generation 3. Alright, number 18, Hearts and Hooves Day. I think really this is an episode that, while not bad, it just seems very materialistic. I think really just because, as I've made it very clear, I am really one of the biggest haters of Valentine's Day, and I just think that really just the idea of the Cutie Mark Crusaders trying to play matchmaker with Big Mac and Miss Shirley, while they did have good intentions, it was just too lovey-dovey for me. I think definitely the funniest moment, everybody can agree, is Sweetie Belle shouting, "Oh, come on!" Because I think it describes everybody when they had their frustration. And then obviously the whole blood poison thing, it kind of makes you wonder what exactly they're doing. And I did like Apple Bloom's exaggeration of what would happen if we couldn't keep them apart, couldn't keep the 2 apart. But yeah, I think this is just an episode that just kind of gets a little too lovey-dovey, and it's just really kind of not all that engaging. I mean, it's still funny here and there, but it's not an episode that I would go back and rewatch again, especially if I have to watch it on Valentine's Day and I have to remind myself of my sad single life. Number 17, It's About Time. Look, this is one of those episodes that I've literally only seen once and had not watched it again until I ended up reviewing it for doing the initial reviews. I think really just what the main problem I had with the episode, outside of the occasional pacing issues, was just how constantly hurt Twilight had to get. It was almost like I was watching Feeling Pinky Keen all over again. Speaking of that, I will give this episode credit that it did give a better explanation of the Pinky sense, better than both Feeling Pinky Keen and the off sense that we got from the mysterious Mare-Duel. So I did like that aspect, but I just didn't like the fact of how constantly Twilight ended up continuously twilighting and continuing to get hurt over and over again. And I think by the end of the episode, it felt like the episode cycle would be going over and over again, like it was on like a time loop or something. I know there were people that liked the episode, but I just couldn't get into it. Number 16, The Last Roundup. Okay, ignoring the massive controversies in regards of Derpy Hooves and with her voice actress and lines being changed, I am not going to bring that up or the controversy surrounding it because, number one, I didn't even know about that controversy when the episode first came out, let alone I cared, and number two, it was completely insignificant to what happened in the actual episode. I know there are people that didn't like the fact, mainly the cartoon hero, that Applejack ended up running away from home over the fact that she ended up getting second place in the rodeo competition, but that wasn't the point. The problem was, and the reason why Applejack ran away, was because she made promises that she would come back with first place and a lot of money to Mayor Mayor, and she basically felt like that she was breaking a promise that she couldn't keep, no matter what event she did. And I think that was the actual point of the episode, not just because she got second place. I do like how we get a little bit more Wilding with Dodge Junction, and of course the Pinky obviously being the Chimichurri line, and basically being annoying to annoy Rainbow Dash into getting her to talk. I thought that was a bit humorous. And of course the episode basically shows what happens when you break a Pinky promise, where Pinky basically gets possessed by Pazuzu from The Exorcist. And, of course, the action of the chase near the end of the episode, and basically the ending of basically Rarity and Pinky being stuck together, definitely brought me a lot more smiles. I still think it's a good episode, even though you can kind of put together what the outcome is going to be. It's not a bad episode by any means. It's certainly better than, say, the bottom 5 episodes. I'll give it that. It's better than the bottom 5 episodes, but I wouldn't say it'd be one of my favorites. Number 15, Sisterhood Social. I think I stand by what I said when I first reviewed the episode. I think Sisterhood Social is probably one of the least talked about episodes of the season. I think this episode basically introduces the relationship of basically Sweetie Belle and Rarity, and how the first half of the episode is basically showing how distant their relationship was, and how Rarity is so consumed by her work that she's ignoring her sister's relationship, and how Sweetie Belle wants to spend time with her. And it basically shows contrast of how Applejack and Applebloom's relationship, since by 2 seasons at this point, since they were the first siblings to be introduced, we have an idea of what their relationship is like. Where Rarity and Sweetie Belle's relationship seems a lot more distant, but we basically see them basically come together and basically show that, you know, as basically Rarity put it, they can be apple pie and they can get along with each other. And we basically see that growth over the course of the show. So this was definitely the first introduction, and basically kind of shows kids what it's like to have an older or younger sibling. So while this episode is good, the other 14 episodes on this list I think are, well, better. Number 14, Mystery on the Friendship Express. AKA Bridal Gossip, but better. I mentioned basically what I like about the episode, and I think I might have mentioned this on the last list when talking about Bridal Gossip, is that the immediate moral for the episode is basically Bridal Gossip, but better, because obviously the mystery was very engaging of who basically destroyed the cake, and Pinky basically constantly accuses the other characters of Gustave, Donut Joe, and Matilda, and I really do like all the references from like the classic film Bad Guy with the cartoon mustache, basically a Naruto clone, and then obviously a James Bond stunt, and and the stories and the exaggerations, but I really just like the mystery in itself, because not only was the mystery engaging, but why the moral in the episode worked better than Bridal Gossip was that Twilight basically worked through the problem with Pinky, and that she was able to help Pinky out with the investigation. And the plot twist of the episode I really did not see coming, because when Pinky talked about the cake and seeing Applejack's reaction, I immediately assumed that Applejack was going to be the culprit. But no, it completely threw me off, and I just really like how all the chefs basically got together and basically made one big treat for Princess Celestia. So while it can drag at points, I do like the mystery and the engagement that the episode brought out. So, Mystery of the Friendship Express is a really good episode. Number 13, Family Appreciation Day. This is another one of those episodes that people just don't really talk about, which I think is unfortunate. I mean, yeah, I know that Apple Bloom doesn't want to get embarrassed by Granny Smith, yes, which kind of makes the first half of the episode drag a little bit, but you could tell that Granny Smith's heart is in the right place and that she basically wants to be there for her granddaughter. And then when we actually see what she's done with the creation of the Zap Apple Jam and just all the mysteries that go into it, you can see that she's not a Creole lady, and to see the flashback of just seeing the founding of Ponyville is very interesting and engaging, and it makes you think about back more of the world building. I think it's just a simple, feel-good episode that I just really couldn't hate, and it kind of makes you feel, gives you an appreciation when talking about your elders because they have a lot of knowledge. They can be embarrassing at times, but they've gone through a lot of things in life that you never knew about, and they can be interesting to talk about. No. So yeah, this is a good episode that I think makes you reconsider a lot of things. Alright, so now that we're halfway through the list, we're now going to go to the episodes I consider at least good. Probably obviously between B and S rank, would I say. Alright, number 12, Hearthwarming Eve. Obviously, this is the first obligatory Christmas episode, and I really like how they gave the backstory of Hearthwarming Eve, and just seeing the flashback, and just seeing all the characters play the said characters, and how the races of the unicorns, the Pegasus, and the Earth ponies were basically all separated, and how they used to be all at each other's throats. And just the story of how the Wendigos basically got together and basically casting a lot of spells, but it's the magic of the three races uniting is essentially what caused the holiday to basically come in. It's really an engaging holiday. It's a really short but simple episode. I would have liked to see the entire thing in flashback, but the play idea and the set piece was definitely interesting. And yeah, there's not really much to talk about this episode. I mean, the story can be engaging, especially when you're watching it if you're like a Broadway or play fan, and a lot of the jokes in there were pretty funny, especially from Pinky's interpretation of Chancellor Puddinghead. It definitely was very great to watch, even if it can get a bit territorial at times from the characters they're being playing as, but that's kind of the point. Yeah, nothing else to say. Number 11, May the Best Pet Win. I understand that there are people that don't like the episode because we already know what the moral is going to be, but I thoroughly enjoyed the episode because just Rainbow Dash wanting to be a part of the rest of her friends and getting a pet. Of course, we should also mention the Big Lip Alligator Moment dream sequence that literally, as I said, nobody refers to in the episode, and the song itself was pretty good as well. I think Rainbow Dash definitely goes through a lot of changes after basically seeing what she has to go through to go as a pet, seeing how Tank really wants to basically be with her. And yes, because we know that the moral is that, yes, Rainbow Dash is going to go with the tortoise and not any of the other animals in there. That can be a bit predictable, but I really like the lengths that Rainbow Dash has to go through, but even though the competition setting doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's the journey that made it enjoyable. Even if the plot is predictable, if the journey is enjoyable, then there's not really much to complain about, and I like the episode. I think really that's just the theme of the rest of the list in this episode, is that after It's About Time, the rest of the episodes I actually liked, and there's not really much any concrete reasons I think could give why there's some... I I think really the one thing that I will give this episode is outside of the predictable nature of the episode, I think the main reason why the episode doesn't crack the top 10 is that I don't think it was necessary for Rainbow Dash to make the pets into a competition type of thing. And they even pointed out in the episode, but I just don't understand why they just let Rainbow Dash go through with it, and it's not really all that necessary. Alright, number 10, Ponyville Confidential. I think I really like this episode, but I understand that there are some issues. I think the main problem I think everybody can agree about this episode is the fact of how Diamond Tiara is just an absolute mega bitch throughout the entire episode, and that she really doesn't suffer any official consequences on screen. I mean, yeah, you could say her falling on the ink, that's her getting her comeuppance, but the fact that the entire town just automatically believed that Sweetie Belle, Scootaloo, and Apple Bloom said all the things with all the gossip in regards of Gabby Gumps, and not think for 1 second that one of the other ponies on the staff had some form of ulterior motive. Like, they didn't bother to raise complaints to Miss Shirley and have her be in charge of the entire thing, considering that she's the one in charge of the club. But I understand that the episode does want to teach the moral about spreading gossip and rumors. And I do think that the moral does pull it off. So that one big negative doesn't really overall hurt the episode, and I think kids will get it, and I think it's something that the episode can actually tackle. It's one of the first of many episodes that tackles a serious subject like gossip and rumors. And I think for the most part, the episode really pulls it off. I think really, like I said, the only thing that holds it back is the fact that Diamond Tiara gets away with all these awful things and that she doesn't really suffer any official consequences. But other than that, it's a legitimate good episode in my book. Number 9, Luna Eclipse. The episode that reintroduced Princess Luna after her reform from Nightmare Moon and have it be a Halloween episode. I can dig it. I think really probably what I would say I would nitpick about the episode is just how basically Rainbow Dash is, basically how she is pranking all the ponies, and just how everybody just immediately treats Princess Luna like a monster, especially Pinkie. And I understand that later in the episode she says that her getting scared is part of the fun, but I just think that if they let Princess Luna explain about what's happening, they might get it. But that being said, the episode is still enjoyable of just seeing how well Luna has been trying to transition after becoming Nightmare Moon. And of course, the famous meme-worthy quotes that we got from Princess Luna that everybody uses to this day. I will never get tired of this episode because just the intrigue and how the surroundings of Nightmare Night is formed is definitely an enjoyable episode in my book. It's not just because of Princess Luna, but just the idea and the world building around Nightmare Night, and of course a couple of jokes that did give me a lot of laughs. So I do think Luna Eclipse is a good episode in my book. Number 8, Read It and Weep. I think this is an episode that I really did enjoy, because this was the episode that was not only the introduction of Rainbow Dash, Ash's love for Daring Do, but also just the fact that the episode basically gives us an idea of what it's like to be reading. Now, obviously, speaking from personal experience, I don't really read a whole lot, because it's not really more my speed, and I know people like to say you can read a book to have fun, but reading is just not engaging to me. However, if it's a book that intrigues me, it's something I might be able to take into. And considering Rainbow Dash is able to get into Daring Do so easily, it's kind of the reaction of how people say when they first get involved with the fandom and they realize that they like the show, and then they try to hide it, because that's basically how... I think this episode's an entire allegory for how, bronies were like the first time they watched the show, and how everybody would think that, you're crazy for liking it. I think the episode's moral is also really good, is that it doesn't, if you're not embarrassed to basically show that you can enjoy something, and you get into it and enjoy, it's basically a don't knock it till you try it type of thing, and I definitely think the episode's moral works. Plus, I will give the Daring Do books this, because basically my camera is sitting on top of the Daring Do collection, and while I haven't read the books yet, it might actually get me incentivized to actually try to read it, so maybe when I rewatch the episode, and I do think it's good, and it might be getting to more reading of the Daring Do books. Now maybe, hopefully, they can release more Daring Do books actually in published and not let it just be in the show. I know this was a bad entry, but that's just how good Read and Weep is in this episode. I think really the one nitpick that I just didn't like is just basically the cliche of the doctors not understanding Rainbow Dash's plight and just automatically assume that she's stealing slippers. Like, come on. Alright, moving on. Number 7, Secret of My Excess. I think what I really liked about this episode is that this is the episode that I thought would finally address the whole Spike and Rarity relationship and how the whole crush situation was squashed. However, I do like that this episode basically dives into what happens of a dragon's true nature, where we see Spike get more and more greedy after his birthday, and that he automatically thinks that ponies are just going to give him stuff. And how the more greedy he gets, he basically becomes more and more what ponies would expect dragons to be. But I think him realizing and seeing Rarity allow him to change his way, as he becomes a Godzilla-like dragon. And I really like how basically they address the whole, where Spike admits that he thought he has a crush on Rarity, and when Rarity stops him, she understands, and basically they still get to be really good friends. If only the rest of the showrunners would drop that whole plot line, because I thought that this episode finally squashed it already, but I'm getting ahead of myself. It's still a solid episode, and at the time, this was the episode where it was like one of the few times where I actually found Spike to be tolerable, because we saw what he was going through, and you want to make sure that he's not going down that dark path. So this was actually one of the first. So Secret of My Excess was actually one of the first Spike episodes I actually liked. And it is a very good episode when you think about it in retrospective. So not a bad episode at all. It's a really, really good episode. Alright, number 6, Sweet and Elite. I think this is the episode that I definitely think would made Rarity's character. Her basically trying to integrate herself into the snooty society of basically the Society of Canterlot, as basically, up until this episode, basically the citizens of Canterlot outside the Royal Sisters are presented as snooty jackasses. However, the introduction of Fancy Pants basically made me think otherwise. And of course, we should also be thankful that despite Rarity getting involved basically with the society and getting more involved with it, and while she's trying to hide that from her friends when trying to celebrate Twilight's birthday with trying to make the dress, by the way, Becoming Popular is still a catchy as hell song, and I do think it's more catchy than Art of the Dress in my opinion, and it's very easy to get into. But I really like the moral that no matter where you go in life, if you're still surrounded by the friends that truly care about you, they'll always stick by you, and you can always stick by from them. And I should also mention that despite the snooty jackasses who basically make all the snooty film characters in any film look like saints in comparison, I really like how Fancy Pants said that he thought they were charming and rustic. And this was basically the first episode to show that we had a Canterlot citizen who was not an asshole. So this is a really enjoyable episode that I think kids can really understand, especially when the part of growing up and sticking it in when trying to balance out your real friends and trying to go out for going with fake friends because you want to be perceived as cool. And a character like Rarity definitely needs to understand that. Alright, number 5. The Return to Harmony. Obviously, the top 5 episodes on this list are definitely top tier. And The Return to Harmony was definitely a great way to kick it off. Just seeing the stakes be raised compared to what it was like against Nightmare Moon, the introduction of Discord back when he was a villain, and how, obviously when I first watched the episode, I didn't like Discord at the time, but as time went on, I started to enjoy him more and more. Just seeing him basically trick the main 6, basically not only taking away the element, so handicapping the MacGuffins right away, then also taking away the wings of Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash, the horns of Rarity and Twilight, and I don't know what he does with Applejack and Pinkie. However, what I do like is how he basically separates all of them and basically uses their own elements their own elements of harmony against them, basically using psychological warfare at at least with Pinkie, Applejack, and Rarity, because as I made it clear in the episode, with Fluttershy, who was oblivious to the whole thing, he kind of cheats, in my opinion. However, but also seeing him do psychological warfare on Rainbow Dash, where Twilight doesn't have any power, the being of chaos was honestly probably one of the closest to coming to winning, because he was able to be messed with the main six psychologically and basically turn them into the opposite of what they were, with Applejack being a liar, Pinkie not understanding what fun is and basically turned into a Mad Max character, Rarity being greedy to get anything that she wants, Fluttershy being absolutely cruel, which was really shocking to see on first watch, and then Rainbow Dash ditching the main six and not caring about what happened afterwards, basically bringing Twilight to her breaking point where even when they try to use the elements, and when they don't work, she feels that all hope is lost. But when she gets all the morals that she had learned from Season 1, she manages to reclaim her friend, and they end up sticking it to Discord and showing that friendship is something that worth fighting for, even when there are times when things get difficult. And I think that's something fans should get, and it shows that friendship is not the easiest thing in the world. But if you're willing to fight for it, it can be a very powerful thing. It was an all-around great opener. Number 4. Lesson 0. I think this is an episode I think everybody can relate to, because the fact of Twilight missing an assignment of missing Princess Celestia's role, I think everybody, especially when you're in your school, when you're about to miss an assignment, and you instantly freak out that you go to extremes to try to fix the problem, I think it's something that everybody can relate to, and to seeing Twilight go absolutely mental over the course of the episode, where essentially she's about to turn into a horror movie villain, where I think even Chucky or Freddy Krueger would be like, what the hell is wrong with you? And just make everybody go obsessed over a doll absolutely cracks me up. I think, obviously, the one thing that I would give the critique about this episode is the fact that the main six just kind of never understood Twilight's plight. However, I think that's basically part of the episode, and it basically changes up the episode structure, where from Season 1, Twilight is the one that's writing down all the lessons, but then it changes up the moral where the main six do own up to the fact that they weren't there for Twilight, and that they're willing to help her out from here on out, and that they should each give their own individual morals, even if some of them are better than others. But aside from that, it is still a funny, charming, and all-around amazing episode to watch. Number 3, Hurricane Fluttershy. This, I think, was definitely a very identifiable episode. Basically not only getting the background of how the weather worked in Cloudsdale, but just seeing how Fluttershy was picked on at flight school, and how the glimpse that we got in the Cutie Mark Chronicles, how it all stood up there, and just how nobody stood up for her just breaks my heart. But seeing that Rainbow Dash is also willing to put her ego aside to be there for her friend and try to help her out, but when times are tough, especially when some of the Pegasus go out with the feather flu, Fluttershy has to go in to help them out, and even when she has those negative thoughts, she pushes herself to help not only her friend, but also the citizens of Cloudsdale to essentially get the water that they need to get the weather. It is a very confidence-boosting episode for Fluttershy, and it's one of the great episodes of Season 2, because it is a very identifiable lesson, especially when you're on like a team, like say cross-country or spring track, where you're constantly comparing yourself to others, and you feel like that what you're doing is not good enough. It is a very, very solid episode, even if Spike does at times get a little bit annoying when pointing out the obvious in terms of the scale and also criticizing Fluttershy. As I said, to quote Ghostbusters, if he does that again, you could shoot him. But that's only a little nitpick. It doesn't take away from how amazing this episode is, and it is definitely one of Fluttershy's best episodes. Number 2, A Friend Indeed. I really don't get why there are people who don't like this episode. First of all, the Smile song, one of the best songs in the entire show. Pinkie obviously trying to be friends with Cranky Doodle and seeing her friend smile. And even though, yes, she does bug Cranky a lot, and that Cranky does have a reason of coming to Ponyville, you know that Pinkie has good intentions, and that she does say that she's sorry, and that she didn't want to push her agenda on the Cranky. It's not like that she was annoying him on purpose. She had good intentions. And hearing Cranky's backstory of wanting to meet up with the donkey Matilda, and then they end up falling in love with each other, is definitely adorable. And of course, the moral of the episode is basically saying that while friends definitely would like to hang out, there are some friends that just want to relax home and chill and not really do much. It's a very good moral that I think people need to understand, that, like, not everybody wants to go out party, drinking, and having a good time. There are some friends that just want to, like, relax and chill. I think it's a very great moral for people to understand. And I think it's still a great episode, and if there's any hate for this episode, I really don't get what it's for. Alright, so with all that said, and the number one best episode of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 2 is A Canterlot Wedding. I might be biased, but I really, really love this finale. Just seeing the finale seeing not only the introduction of basically Shining Armor, as well as the introduction of Cadance, and just what Twilight's past relationship was like, that she did have friends, and more so in her brother and with her great Soul Sitter, and just seeing something off with her in the wedding, it seems like something doesn't seem right. And when Twilight basically lashes out with her, and just seeing everybody abandon her like that, it's like, and just seeing her cry with the Big Brother Best Friend song, it's like, Jesus, this is My Little Pony. I didn't think it would get this emotional. And then by the end of the first part, it basically turned into goddamn Maleficent, as we find out that Cadance is basically, well, said Maleficent, but we know it was actually a doppelganger, and this episode's also the introduction of not only Queen Chrysalis, but also the Changelings. And of course, the best part about the second part of the episode is the action, where after admittedly seeing Celestia get her ass kicked is kind of disappointing. Just seeing the main six basically fight off an entire army of changelings in some great action at the time and a lot of great humor, it was definitely really a sight to behold. And just seeing how godly the fighting animation was definitely a blast to watch, which also makes the fighting in Dragon Quest even more redundant. But I do like how even then, and basically the changelings still get the upper hand on the main six, and they aren't get to the elements of harmony in time. And I know I said that Discord came really close to winning, but honestly at the time, Chrysalis actually came the closest to succeeding. The only reason why she ended up failing in the end was because Cadance got to basically, well, not only be with her soon-to-be husband, and they ended up defeating her and the changelings with the power of love. And it's just all around a really, really great finale to Season 2. There were a lot more stakes going on, and it was a massive step up from the best night ever. While still a good episode, it was still all around engaging, suspenseful, intense. It was just a blast to watch. And that's why I think A Canterlot Wedding is the best episode of Season 2. Alright, with that, two seasons down, 7 to go. I know I kind of breezed through this season, but I think outside of the really, really bad episodes, there's not really much to complain about with Season 2, and I think that kind of really proves the quality of the episode. I can get behind a few meh episodes, some few really bad episodes, but overall, a really good weight distribution of really good episodes when compared to Season 1. So I definitely think that Season 2 was a solid step up over Season 1. Because I'd rather have a lot of really good episodes over a few meh and some really awful episodes. Alright, next time we are going to be covering the shortest season of the entire show. So hopefully the next one is going to be a lot shorter. So next time we are going to be looking at the top 12 episodes of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 3. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.